guys, welcome back to Days of Darkness and welcome to my review of The Invisible Man. Now, this movie came out in 2020. It's starring Elizabeth Moss, Oliver Jackson Cohen, and Aldous Hodge, and was written and directed by Leigh Whannell. Man, what a fucking ride, guys. That's the only way I can really start this review off. If you're in the mood for an emotional roller coaster splashed with a good amount of horror, there are a couple movies I could recommend to you, but this is without a shadow of a doubt one of them. This was one of my favorite movies of last year. This movie is that good. So obviously, right off the top, fuck yeah, I recommend this movie 100%. Um, this was one of the last movies I was able to go see in theaters before everything happened. Um, and man, sitting in the theater, obviously then I knew I fucking adored this movie. There was no question in my mind. But I really wasn't sure why necessarily. I just knew that I really, really enjoyed it. Um, but man, on this rewatch, which this is only the second time I've seen this movie, I now have a new appreciation for it, even greater than I did before. First of all, the technical aspect of filmmaking is masterfully done here. Leigh Whannell is great, just fantastic. But man, just for me, I think it's encapsulated. Obviously, this movie is shot very well. There's nothing technically wrong with it. Editing's on point, all of that. But to me, what sticks out the most is the ability to shoot nothing. There are times in this movie where it's either a wide shot or the camera pans somewhere else in a room and there's nothing there. Now obviously the antagonist in this movie is invisible. So it could be argued that, oh well, of course people are going to pay attention to shit like that, but to me it's the way it's done. Just that ability to shoot nothing. Imagine me not in the frame right now. Like, yeah, there's some cool shit behind me, at least in my opinion. But other than that, what are you really looking at? You're not really looking at anything. And there are moments in this movie where, to the human eye, you're looking at nothing at all. But it's the tone and the way that these scenes are set up and the way these scenes are shot. And people say, oh, well, cinematography isn't that big of a deal. It's a fucking huge deal, especially in horror. And I could ramble on for hours just talking about that. The ability to shoot nothing and have people on the edge of their seat is fucking incredible. And sometimes you get a payoff, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's just, oh, you know, spooky. But every single instance of that in this movie, I love. Not only that, but to me, there is such a basic fear of not being able to see what you're afraid of. Whether it be like paranormal, like a ghost, or in this case, something more scientific. In this, I guess I kind of spoiled it a little bit, but not really. That's kind of from the get go, the whole thing. But, anyways, um, just that fear, and even the fear of the dark, not knowing what's in front of you. That is a very basic fear. And again, going along with the cinematography that I talked about ad nauseum just now, they utilize that fear so well. I mean, as a kid, I used to be afraid of the dark. I used to be afraid of not being able to see what was coming to get me, and that is what that is the epitome of this movie. She literally can't see the person who is trying to harm her. That's fucking terrifying. Such a genius concept, such a simple concept. It's again something that like Halloween does very well, and so I always love simple concepts that are executed to perfection. And this movie, in my mind, it's a it is a near perfect horror movie, I think. Is it a gore fest? Is it a slasher? Are blood spurting all over the walls? No. But the way it's executed, in my opinion, I fucking love this movie. Uh, yeah, good stuff. I'm rambling a lot. Sorry, but this movie kicks ass. And then the performances. The performances from the actors and actresses in this movie is incredible. Most notably, obviously, the star of this movie, Elizabeth Moss, depicts the victim of abuse very, very well. Uh, yeah, whoa, God, like, this is not the time or place for me to get too much into this, but I've had my own experience with that sort of thing. Totally different situation, totally different, yada, yada, yada. We're not here for that, but I can tell when that sort of shit is being faked. And obviously, it's a movie, but she is so convincing in this role, and just the writing is incredible. The way they handle this sort of situation, it's terrifying. Whether you've been a victim of abuse or not, this is not the time or place to discuss that. All love to you if you have. But being able to depict someone who has gone through that and being able to do it so well like she does, it's incredible. So big credit to Elizabeth Moss. I can't remember if she got nominated for anything. She definitely should have. I know the Academy and all that shit, they like to snub horror and act like it's not a genre and all this fucking bullshit, which fuck them for even acting like that, which some people say they don't, but they do. And it's bullshit. Same with like superhero movies and stuff like that. But anyways, that will basically wrap up the spoiler-free section. I don't really want to get into too much of the story of this because this is one of those movies that you really just need to hop into. I did allude to a little bit of it, but that's pretty much right off the jump street. That's what it is. It's pretty fucking clear. But yeah, so I'm gonna stop rambling as usual. Let's just spoil the shit out of this motherfucker. All right, spoiler time. Your ass has been warned. Now, this movie's opening to me, right off Jump Street, you know the type of film you're going to get. It's a very sinister tone, very grim, very suspenseful, and it tells an incredible story with zero dialogue. I think there might be like a couple instances where she like makes a peep, but other than that, nothing. And that is not only because she is trying to be quiet, but it's well, yeah, it's because she's trying to be quiet, but just the way you can immediately tell what is going on. I cannot stand having shit just constantly explained to me. I'm not stupid. I don't like movies that treat their audiences like they're stupid. And while what's going on here is not extremely complex or anything like that, still massive credit to the filmmakers for being able to execute this in such a fantastic way. Basically, what's going on here is Cecilia, Elizabeth Moss's character, is trying to escape her extremely abusive boyfriend, Adrian. And you can tell already that this man has a lot of money. You can see that he's some sort of scientist. It's later addressed that is optics. So, seeing, invisible, yeah, there you go. Like I said, not really big of a spoiler that it's scientific in nature. But that it's about I don't even want to attempt to guess on how long this opening is, but man, it's fucking so riveting. Even on this rewatch, I'm like, and I know what's gonna happen. Like, so anyone who doesn't know this movie, I mean, this opening is just fucking great. She ends up, I think, like it's so cool. You can tell she knows him so well, but later on in the movie, it's pretty clear that he knows her just as well, if not even a little better. Well, not really, but it's clear that they have been in a relationship for quite a long time, and she just has this fear of him, which, being in an abusive relationship, that fear is very real, and it's very, very. It's not nothing that is done, and nothing about the handling of the abuse part of this story, in my mind, is too far fetched, especially if it's brutal like what she went through. Ooh, damn. Gassy. Anyways, but she ends up escaping. She tries to get the shock collar or whatever it is off of their dog Zeus, who is a very, very handsome boy, might I add. I'm a big dog guy, but she's trying to get that off of him. She ends up getting it off, I think, and then his ass hits one of the cars. Car alarm goes off, and she has to fucking run for it. And it was already extremely suspenseful from that point, and then it gets fucking pulse pounding. She ends up having to jump the gate. She meets her sister, Emily, who who's there. I think it's like she wakes up at like 3:30 a.m. or something crazy, 3:40 or something like that. Very, very early in the morning. And she comes and picks her up, and as she gets in the car, it was so close. Adrian comes running up, and I love how they handled uh, the character of Adrian throughout the movie when you actually see him, because you don't really get a very good look at him, which makes the whole invisibility thing even more, in my mind, a little more scary. Um, but yeah, man, he bursts through that fucking window and is trying to grab her and shit, and you speed off, and that's your opening. She ends up staying at her friend James, staying with her friend her ends up staying with her friend James and his daughter Sydney, and it is then revealed a little later on that Adrian has committed suicide, and she gets a very large sum of money from him on his will or whatever. And his brother is actually his lawyer, so that's already, you're kind of like, ooh, it's kind of weird, man. It's kind of fishy. And but yeah, she ends up getting $5 million, not all at once. So she gets to send her basically what I would imagine is like her niece Sydney to the school she wanted to go to, and everything's happy hunky dory. But then Adrian comes back, and he is invisible, hence the title, Invisible Man. And from there, it's a fucking ride, man. Like, everything about this story to me is so captivating. Um, it starts with little shit. Like, he's taking pictures of her, and he's just fucking with her. And then it starts to progressively get more and more severe. Uh, at one point, she's on the ground crying. Sydney comes to comfort her, and he slaps her in the face, slaps Sydney in the face. And obviously, Sydney's like, well, there's no one here, so obviously you did it. I saw some people kind of debating that reaction and like, why would she react like that? She was no way. When you, first of all, some people can hit quick as shit. And when you get slapped, you're not really thinking, well, where did that come from? You're like, holy shit, there's only one person in the room with me, at least in her mind, and I just got fucking the shit knocked out of me. So clearly, there's only one logical explanation, but this isn't a logical situation. More time than I planned on spending on that, but but yeah, and it just gets more and more severe. He writes a very nasty, bad, dirty email to her sister, which ends up getting her to cut her off, getting Emily to cut Cecilia off, at least briefly. And yeah, man, and then we get she ends up finding out how he's doing this. She sneaks into his house, which he's supposed to be dead, so, you know, I would be pretty nervous about going back there because who says he's not there? It's his fucking house. But you know, whatever. Like he sabotages her job interview and all this shit. But anyways, she finds his invisibility suit, and the suit itself, it definitely looks weird. Like it's, but you know, it's what you would think something like that would look like. It has a bunch of different little cameras on it and shit, and it's a fully black suit from head to toe, and you know, it's in my mind for the premise pretty realistic. It's a pretty realistic way for someone to turn invisible. I know in the original, which I have not seen, I think it was more of a supernatural thing, which we even get a little nod to the original in the hospital, where a burn victim, is bandaged up very similarly to the original Invincible Man. Invisible. But it might feel like I'm rambling here, but the abuse just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and it eventually lands her begging Emily for help. She's lost her friendship briefly with James because she slapped his daughter, so that's clearly not going to be. Which I love that handling of that. It's like, I think James is a great character. Him being like, listen, you know, I feel for you right now, but I need to protect my fucking daughter, and the only logical thing I see here is you're here, she's here, and she's in pain, and I need to get her out, which is a very, very cool, realistic depiction of a very good father. So, props to Aldous Hodge for another very good performance. Not only in that scene, but just in the movie in general. And so she ends up having to beg Emily for help. I mean, she has no money left. So they meet in the diner, and not in the, it's a very fancy restaurant, and Emily's rather rude to the waiter. As someone who works in customer service, I was like, man, I don't know, but you know, whatever. But yeah, so they're talking, and you know, she agrees to help her, and they even kind of laugh a little bit, and you know, stuff seems like it's going all right, and then all of a sudden there's a knife just floating in the air, at least to Emily. And before you can even think, what the fuck, just boom, neck open, Emily's neck, knife, bam, in Cecilia's hand, and you're like, what the fuck? I remember being in the theater with my buddy Cody, who I basically went and saw all the movies I ever saw over the past couple of years with, and both of our jaws just like that. It's like, again, this movie's not a splatter fest. This movie's not anything like that. But for something that was so calm in the graphic violence department to all of a sudden just boom, like now a line has been crossed clearly. Obviously, everyone in the restaurant freaks out. Clearly, Cecilia's the one doing this, which no, but she ends up getting carted off to the loony bin. She ends up finding out that she is pregnant, which I actually totally forgot about, and so I got to have that shock all over again, because that's the one aspect of the movie that they play up in a couple scenes after it's revealed. Most notably when Tom, Adrian's brother, and his lawyer comes up to basically tell her that, hey, you committed a crime, so I can't give you any more of this money. Then he ends up whispering to her. He's like, I can make a couple phone calls. Just keep the baby, and you know, I can make this all go away. Which is fucked up, man. And Adrian's like, not Adrian, Cecilia's like, man, fuck you. And he's like, all right, you know, I'll give you some time to think about it. And then he just looks back at her. He's like, we'll be watching. And I'm like, man. So clearly this guy's in on it. It was kind of up for debate a little bit there before, but now it's like, yeah, he's fucking in on it. So she ends up trying to kill herself, or at least trying to lure him to think she's going to kill herself. And She ends up escaping and yada yada. And I'm not gonna run through the whole fucking deal here, but um, it's a fucking thrill ride, man. And I am not doing this story any justice, mind you. You need to see this movie. I would hope you have seen it if you're watching the spoilers section, but you know, to each their own. And what another aspect of this story that's so compelling, and I'm glad I left off at the loony bin to talk about this. It sounds fucking nuts. It sounds fucking crazy. There is an invisible man torturing me. I would think she's fucking crazy too. You know, and it's like for some people, when you go through such a traumatic experience, it's not too far fetched for them to kind of lose it. You know, especially with the PTSD and the anxiety that she has about him. I mean, she can't even walk out of the fucking house in the beginning of this movie. Well, when she gets to James's house, she can't even walk out of the house. So for the people around her that she is telling this to, obviously they're not going to believe her. You know, and I've heard some people like, oh, I got so mad at the characters for not believing her. It's like, why would you? You wouldn't fucking believe anybody if they told you that. I wouldn't. And so you get that, especially on Emily, for that split second, she's like, oh my God. And then obviously she dies. But, man, what a fucking ride. So she ends up escaping. We get the reveal that we get the initial fake out reveal that Adrian is actually alive, which he is actually alive, no fucking shit. But that Tom has also been wearing this suit. I couldn't really tell you which times it was Tom and which times it was Adrian. I imagine most of the time it was Adrian. But Tom in the suit goes to fucking excuse me, ends up going to James's house trying to hurt Cecilia and I guess trying to kill her. James ends up getting the shit knocked out of him, and then you know Cecilia busts in the door with a fire extinguisher, ends up spraying down Tom and shoots his ass and fucking kills him. And then we get the ripping the mask off Scooby-Doo moment. Oh my God, it's Tom. Obviously he can't say you meddling kids because, you know, he's fucking dead. But so then, okay, everyone's like, all right, you have your freedom. Everything's good. She's like, no, Adrian was behind this. There's no way. So then from there we get what I would say is a pretty damn satisfying ending. We have Cecilia, who previously stole one of the suits. I imagine that's the only way she could have gotten her hands on one. And they're having dinner. Her and Adrian are actually sitting down and having dinner. Basically, Adrian's pinned this whole thing on Tom. Shitty move, man. Shitty move, but Adrian's a shitty person. So not really surprising. And she ends up basically they agree to I got the impression she was agreeing to get back together with him, which you know would be a dumb move, but you know Adrian has that effect on people. It's very clear that he's you know able to mentally fuck with her, which makes the ending all more satisfying of her saying like, okay, I need to go clean up. And she goes to the bathroom, puts on the invisible suit or whatever, the invisibility suit, whatever. You don't see this happening, by the way. She just goes off, get a little shot of her in the bathroom, and Adrian's just sitting there, and he has his knife and his fork, and she just grabs his fucking wrist in the invisibility thing, because there's a camera. That's the whole thing. It's framed like suicide, and so she fucking just slits his fucking throat. Absolutely brutal kill, which we will get to in the kill of the film section, obviously. but man, oh man, just seeing that happen, and then she comes back from the bathroom and is, oh my god, and just I love the shift of when she kind of is like eyeing the camera and making sure she's off camera. And as soon as she's off camera, she calls 911. Oh my god, he just killed himself, yada yada yada. And as soon as she gets out of view of that fucking security camera, her face just turns stone fucking cold, man. And she just watches him die, which is like, man, after all the shit that dude put her through, you have every right in the world, girlfriend. And he does, man. He just fucking bleeds out and he dies. And uh, really, really cool final moments where she kind of just walks out just like a fucking boss. And even, James, who I didn't even mention is a fucking cop, is like, man, she, like, he can tell what happened. I mean, he looks down in the bag and he can see the fucking suit. And she's like, he killed himself. And he just goes like, he killed himself. So even the cops covering for her, man. Which, granted, it's her best friend, but man, oh man, what a fucking movie. I know I don't usually run down the story too much, which I feel like I kind of did here a little bit, but I just love this story so much. I think it's magnificent. Uh, I think, like I said, the handling of the abuse side of things, I think, was done perfectly. Couldn't have been any better, in my opinion. Um, People have some technical problems, especially with the ending of how she was able to do all of that so quickly and get the suit on and then get her like go out there, kill him, go back, take the suit off, yada yada. Um, but man, to me, I mean, and obviously it's not far fetched. There's leaps in time and all that shit, and there's little editing things, and people like to nitpick that. I really don't have a problem with it. I guess that's the only flaw, but to me, it's really not. It's. I think, I think this movie is very, very compelling. Like, um, it's not like I said, not a gore fest, not a splatter fest or anything like that. But damn, man, this movie is incredible. If you haven't seen it, obviously you just got spoiled on fucking all of it. But like I said before, absolutely 100% recommend this, guys. So that'll do it for the review portion. But man, we still have to talk about the blood, the guts, the gory bits. We gotta talk about my kill of the film. Stick around. As I've mentioned before, The Invisible Man is by no means a splatterfest or a gore fest or anything like that. There's no Invisible Man ripping people's heads off and shit like that. But what we do get as far as kills, it's mostly it's for a different purpose. It's not necessarily to be like, oh my god, that person just got fucking ripped in half or anything like that. It's not meant to be like, oh shit. It's basically the two most notable deaths of the film are Emily's and Adrian's, and they're both actually throat slits, which I think is rather poetic. This is by no means a slasher movie. It's just not. Um, if I had to choose one, first of all, uh, there are other kills in this movie. Obviously, Tom getting killed. There's a lot of guards in the loony bin that get axed, and which I don't know if it's necessarily politically correct for me to call it a loony bin, but hey, there we go. Sorry, but anyways, so we we get a lot of guards dying there. Not all of them die though. It's a lot of them are just very severely injured. But we do get a couple deaths there. But for the most part, it's all about Emily and Adrian. And if I had to give a default kill of the film to, I would probably go with Emily's. Adrian's is definitely, brutal. It's slow, it's drawn out. She just takes that knife and just basically rips this dude's neck open. So it's definitely graphic, but to me, like I said, this is a very story driven film. I don't usually run, like I said before, I don't usually run down the stories, but I couldn't help myself and I fucking nerded out and just talked about the story. Uh, I think I got my points across, but nonetheless. Um, but that's how good of a story this is, and the kills are meant to drive that story forward and they're meant to have impact. And to me, nothing has more impact than Emily's just quick boom, just out of nowhere fucking death. I obviously saw it coming on my second time around, but that first time you do not see it coming. It is the last place situation, anything where you would think that he would just go and kill somebody. But man, it's absolutely brutal, intense, crazy, and it's my kill of the film. All right, guys, that'll do it. Little bit of an unorthodox, a little bit of an unorthodox review here, but like I said, I just fucking love this story, and I wanted to talk about it. So, whatever. But nonetheless, guys, great film. Absolutely go check it out. I've said that multiple times here, but nonetheless, next time we are going to be talking about an absolute classic. We are going to be talking about Candyman. So I can't wait to get into that, guys. As always, take care of one another and keep watching horror. All right, guys. See ya.